Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar, Microsoft 365 Security Baseline for 2026. Today, cybersecurity is no longer just a technical concern. It directly impacts business continuity, compliance, and overall risk. At Villa in Asia, we work closely with organizations to implement and manage solutions like Microsoft 365, helping them not just adopt the tools, but configure them properly to meet security and operational needs. Many operations believe, or many organizations instead believe their Microsoft 365 environment is secure, but in reality, gaps often exist in the baseline setup itself. This session will focus on what a proper Microsoft 365 security baseline should look like in 2026 and what organizations need to have in place to reduce risk and stay audit ready. If you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, throughout this session, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat bar. We will address them during the Q&A session later. To walk us through this, we have Adi Damanhuri, our project lead, who will be sharing practical insights and real-world perspectives. Without further ado, Adi, over to you.
Thank you, Reza. Okay, let me share my screens. All right, Reza, are you able to see my screens?
Crystal clear, Adi.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Adi. My name is Muhammad Adi Damari. You can call me Adi. So I'm the project lead, senior manager from Vilan Asia. I've been working with Vilan Asia more than 7 years. We are Microsoft partner, and of course, we are Microsoft certified for Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365. So today, I would like to sharing to this webinar about Microsoft has introduced a new baseline security modes for Microsoft 365 in 2026, which enforce security by default setting across identity, email, collaborations, and data protection. While not every tenant is automatically locked down, Microsoft is strongly encouraged and some cases force enabling baseline control to reduce common breach path. However, in this webinar, I would like to highlight most cloud breach don't require exploit, but you can improve 5 misconfiguration that still can cause the breach. So practically, Microsoft 365 security baseline for 2026. For growing numbers of organizations, Microsoft 365 is not just another SS product. It's the backbone, identity, email, collaboration, file storage, and increasingly. The security start itself. Entra ID is the identity provider. Azure Online handle emails, SharePoints, and OneDrive hold documents. Teams are running communication for many environments. If Microsoft 365 goes down or get compromised, so does the business. The concentration means identity security is not just one layer of defense. It is of the primary layer. If attacker can compromise an identity in your tenant, they can usually reach email files and internal communication without needing the move literally in the traditional sense. They are already inside the application that matter. So here is uncomfortable part. The majority of cloud breaches don't involve software exploit. They don't require zero-day or malware. They rely on control gaps, which is weak authentications, incomplete policy, monitoring blind spots, and configuration drift that quietly accumulate over time. So this post outline a practically security baseline for Microsoft 365. It is not executive and it won't cover every edge case, but it focuses on control that consistently make the biggest difference in reducing real-world breach path. For weak authentication, for example, phishing MFA, and legacy protocol bypass model defense. For incomplete policy, of course, gap in condition access. Monitoring blind spot, insufficient login turns contentable event into a major incidents. This one. For configuration drift, exception acknowledge silent error security posture over time. For this one, I will highlight in this webinar after this slide. So 5 misconfiguration that still cause a breach. Before getting into the baseline itself, it's worth looking at the 5 issues that still appear frequently in compromised tenants. There is not theoretical list, they are configuration gaps that incident response see over and over again. First, for the phishing MFA for privileged access, this is common that we have to take note. Most organizations have enabled MFA at this point, and that generally good progress, but not all MFA is created equally, and the distinction matters more than people realize, because some of people in your organization, maybe you can most organization not enable for all user, only enable for certain user. That's not the best practice and good to implement in your organizations. Method like SMS code, voice verification, and email OTP all certify the technical requirement for a second factor. The problem is they are vulnerable to interception or social engineering, and authentically running a real-time phishing proxy can capture SMS code just as easily as a password. From the identity provider perspective, the logging looks completely legitimate. For privileged account, such as global admin, Asian admin, security role, this is significant gap. This account have the most access and cause the most damage when compromised. They should be protected with a phishing resistant method such as passkey, FIDO2, secret key, or certificate-based authentications. This method are cytographically bounds to the legitimate service, means uh, which mean phishing proxy cannot rely them. So this the goal is not to remove MFA option work general user. It's to ensure that your most sensitive account use method that cannot be phishing. Second one is legacy authentication still needed. So you need to enable. Legacy authentication still enabled for this, which is not good. Legacy authentication protocols such as IMAP, PORT3, SMTP, and all the Office client were designed before modern security control exists. They don't support conditional access, they don't support MFA, and they authenticate with the basic credentials. That's make them a bypass path. An attacker who obtain a username and password can authenticate directly via legacy protocol. So completely sidestepping and any conditional access policy you have configured. It doesn't not matter how sophisticated for the your policy in their protocol level side door. The frustrating part is many organizations leave legacy authentication enabled not because they need it, because they never check. In most modern environment, it can be blocked entirely, where there are generally dependency. Uh, Other line of business application or shared mailbox with legacy interactions, those should be scoped tightly and monitoring closely rather than left as a blanket exception. The third one, unrestricted MFA registration. So this one is underappreciated. One of the first thing an attacker does after compromise credential in register their own MFA methods, phone number, authentication apps, security key. Once they're done, they have precise access that survive a password reset. So this is, we have to take note on that as well. Think about it. You detect compromised account, reset the password, and assume the problem is resolved. But is If attacker register their own authenticator app during the Windows they had access, they can pass MFA challenge with their own device. So the account still compromised. So controlling MFA registration is essential. Require existing MFA or temporary access pass to the register new methods mean attacker with just stolen password cannot bootstrap their own second factor. Other thing on authenticate method change given your security team's visibility into this activity, which is often one of the earliest indicator of compromised identity. Number 4, which is uncontrolled mailbox forwarding. Inbox forwarding rules are favorite persistent mechanism during business email compromise. An attacker create a rule that silently forward copy of incoming email to external address, then sit back and monitor communication. This is particularly dangerous in invoice fraud scenario. The attacker watch for the payment-related conversation, then inject themselves at the right moment with modified bank details. Because they have been read the entire threads, the fraud messages often look completely legitimate to the recipient. The simple mitigation is disabling external auto forwarding at the transport level. This is a tenant-wide setting in Exchange Online that prevent any mailbox rule from forwarding email outside the organization. For the rare case, where external forwarding is genuinely needed, it can be granted as a specific exception rather than left open by default. It's what audit existing forwarding rule too. In many tenants, there are rules that were created months or years ago. Nobody remember the setup. The last one, which is limited audit log. Logging in one of those controls that everyone agree is important, but few organizations invest in until something goes wrong. And by then, the logs you need either don't exist or have already by been overwriting. The default log retention in Microsoft 365 is relatively short. If an accident is discovered week or month after the initial compromise, which is common, you may have the log, but need to understand what is happening. So that make scoping the incident harder, extend recovery timelines, and can turn contributing event into a much larger problem. Beyond retentions, there are question of covers. Are you logging sign-in activity, mailbox access, file download, admin action, and change to the security configuration? Each of these tell a different part of the story during the investigation. So missing any one of them can leave behind spot the attacker has already exploited. So extending audit log retention, ensuring comprehensive cover across workload is not glamorous, but is one of the highest value investment you can make it incident readiness. So about the identity protection. For identity is the perimeter in Microsoft 365. If your identity control are weak, everything downstream is exposed. So you require phishing resistant MFA for previous role. For global admin, agent admin, security admin, and other high privilege role should use passkey or certificate-based authentication, not SMS or email. Use authentication trends in conditional access. Entra ID lets you define authenticate strength policy that specify which MFA method acceptable for different scenario. Use them to enforce phishing resistant method where it's matter most. You can block legacy authentication protocol. Create a condition access policy that block legacy authentication for all users. If exceptions are genuinely needed, scope them narrowly and review them regularly. Enable identity protection risk policy. Entra ID use signal like impossible, travel, anonymous IP, and leak credential to flag risky sign-in. Configure it to require MFA or block access when risk is detected. So this policy catch things that static rule miss. Next one is conditional access. Conditional access is a policy engines that tie everything together. It's evaluate context, who signed in, from where, on what device, and what risk level, and makes access decision based on the context. So for conditional access, you can enable require MFA for all users. Should be the baseline for every tenant, not just privileged user, not just external access, but for everyone. The attack surface reduction from universal MFA is substantial. Require compliance or hybrid joint device for privileged access. If your organization running hybrid, you also can enable this kind of policy in conditional access. Device compliance adds a layer that credential thief alone cannot bypass. If attacker has stolen credential but doesn't have the managed device, they cannot authenticate to certificate sources. Next, which is restrict admin portal access to trusted network or compliant device. So this one is more to geolocation access from conditions access. Administrator action should only happen from known secure contact. This limit the blast reduce for the radius even if admin credential is compromised. So next one is privileged access. For this standing privilege liability, if an account permanently hold a global administrator right, everyone exists is a moment that access could be abused. So for the best practice implement in your organization is use intra-privileged identity management, PIM. PIM allow you to make a privileged role eligible rather than permanent. Use active the role when they need for a defined period with approval and MFA required. Next one is remove standing global admin assignment. No account should hold a global admin as a permanent assignment. Use PIM for just in time for the activations and keep the numbers of eligible account to the minimum necessary. Third one, require approval and MFA for privilege elevations. Adding a human approval step for the most sensitive roles mean compromised identity cannot silently escalate its own access. Combined with the MFA activation, this is significantly raise the bar for the attacker. Next is email protection. For email remain the primary entry point for the more attack against Microsoft 365 tenant. Business email compromise, credential phishing, and malware delivery all start in the inbox. So from Microsoft 365, with the specific license, you can enable Defender for Office 365 anti-phishing policy. This go beyond basic spam filtering to detect impersonation attempts, spoofings, and advanced phishing technique. Configure them with the aggressive setting for high-value target like finance and executive teams. Configure impersonation protection. Defender for Office 365 can specifically protect against attacker impersonation, your executive, partner, or domain. This is particularly effective against the kind of targeted BEC attack the lead to invoice fraud. Last one, which is disable external auto forwarding. As discussed above, block externally forwarding at the transport level and audit any existing rule. This close one of the most common persistence part in the email compromise. Next one is data protection. For controlling data access and movement is especially important in environment where sensitive information live across multiple Microsoft 365 workload. So deploy Microsoft Purview data loss prevention across workload. So DLP policy should cover Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. Gaps between workload create acceleration path that attackers active look for. Restrict externally sharing to the least privilege. You can review sharing default in SharePoint and OneDrive. Many tenants allow anonymous sharing, like you can share to everyone, which is almost certainly more permissive than internet. Apply sensitive label where appropriate. Appropriation. Sensitive label help classify and protect information consciously. They are most effective when applied to the content that matter most, financial data, personal information, intellectual property, rather than trying to label everything at once. For next is monitoring and response. For prevent is important, but detection give you the ability to catch what prevention misses. Every control in this baseline can be circumvented given enough time and the right conditions. Monitoring is what limit the damage. So you can alert on MFA method change. As I covered earlier, MFA registration by an attacker is one of the first post-compromise action. Detection is quickly can mean the difference between a contained incident and long-term compromise. Next one is alert on privilege role assignments. Any changes to the administrative role should generate an alert. If someone is granted global admin outside of your normal changing process, you want to know immediately. Next one, which is monitor suspicious inbox rules. Rules that forwarded, redirects, or delete email, especially to the external address, a strong indicator of compromise. Please automate detection here to catch persistent mechanism early. Last one, which is extend audit log retentions. Ensure you have sufficient log retention to support investigation timeline. For many organizations, their default retention period is not long enough to cover the typical time between initial compromise and detection. So this kind of thing is require some additional license to extend the logs in Microsoft 365. So last one, which is the governance layer. So this is here the thing about security baseline. The decade, they not because someone deliberately weak dams, but because environment change and error is relentless. A condition access policy gets exception for a migration project that never get removed. A new admin is granted standing privilege because PIM activation feels like too much friction. Legacy authentication get re-enabled for one application that stay uh, on for everything. So each individual change seems reasonable in context. Over time they accumulate. Configuration drift is the quiet killer of cloud security posture. The control you deployed 6 months ago may not reflect what actually enforced today. For example, that I can give for this is some organizations still disable the security default because they would like to use that traditional way or legacy, which is to use SMTP. For your information, Microsoft 365 has been EOL for SMTP, which is this is a legacy way and easy to attackers to attack using that kind of uh, way to attack the organizations. So maintaining a document baseline, a regularly review tenant configuration against it is the only reliable way to prevent this error. Tools like Microsoft Secure Score, Entra recommendation, and third-party posture management solution can help automate this, but they work best when you have a clearly defined target state to measure against. Without without governance, most environment eventually accumulate enough gap for attacker to change together into valuable breach path. So, which is my final thought, which is Microsoft 365 security does not fail because the platform lack control. The tooling is generally comprehensive, more capable than most organization relies. It's fail, it's failed when those control are implemented partially, inconsistently, or only after an incident forced the conversations. A tenant with a handful of well-enforced policy is a dramatically better position than one with a dozen of policy that are riddled with the exception. The difficult part is not deploying the control. It's maintaining the constantly over time through the staff change, project pressure, and slow drift of operational convenience. So partially baseline regularly review and honestly maintains is worth more than a perfect on the paper architecture that nobody checks for this. Yeah, I think pretty much that's all. So before the Q&A sessions, I would like to share some bonus sharing to this webinar. Let me share on that. Okay. Okay, so this is a bonus sharing for this webinar. Microsoft has just launched the Entra ID backup and recovery, along with features that allow administrator to natively backup and restore critical identity configuration directly in the Entra Admin Center. This means IT team can now recover users, groups, app, policy, and more without relying on the third-party tools. So the key thing needs to know is built-in backup recovery solution for Microsoft Entra ID, formerly known as Azure ID. So they let admin restore directly object to previously known good state after accidental change malicious updates. So eliminates that need for custom script or third-party tools. So no need third-party tools for this. So you can go to the Microsoft Entra Admin Center and you can find backup and recovery. So what is a support object? You can backup and restore for users, groups, applications, manage identity, conditional access, names, location, authentication method, policy, and authorized policy. So by default, Microsoft's always on backup are automatically create without manual intervention. As you can see, Entra automatically generate one backup per day, intend for 5 days only. So the benefit when Microsoft launched for these features, which is if disaster recovery, you can quickly recover from accident deletion or misconfiguration. So for security response, rollback malicious change after a compromise, and then operation efficiency, you can reduce downtime and avoid complex manual review. So, what is the minimum license to use for this? Like you mentioned, this is uh, if you want to try out Entra ID backup and recover today, you need at least Entra ID P1 license minimum, which means you can have a business premium for this. So if your organization already on P2, will naturally have access, but P1 is the minimum every point. Okay, let me share again back to the slide. Okay, I think pretty much that's all. So we can move on the Q&A sessions.
All right. Thank you, Adi, for the session. And for the bonus points as well, that's always appreciated. I think everyone just got a bit more than what was promised, but never mind. We'll now move into the Q&A segment. So this is where we can go a bit deeper into a specific scenarios, challenges, or concerns you may have around your Microsoft 365 environment. So without further ado, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A chat bar. We will take a moment to go through them.
Sure, thank you, Reza.
All right, so I'm planning to read the questions for you to you, Adi. So maybe we can answer from that. All right. So first question from an anonymous user: with AI generating more realistic emails, how should companies rethink phishing awareness?
Um,
Because I've actually myself experienced this, knowing that the email was actually looks realistic, but that is actually a phishing email. So how do companies actually overcome this phishing awareness, Adi?
So what I can say, they can shift training focus, which means they are need to aware legitimate where the email come from, and then you can build a culture of verification as well to encourage employee to pause and verify requests, especially financial or executive communications. So the most important is awareness about the phishing email, which is don't open or or click specific email that not legitimate.
All right. Thank you, Adi, for the questions. So moving on to the next question from Maya Amira Yusri. Does this new function apply to all Microsoft plans?
Okay, that is good question for this. For Microsoft, they have default or basic plan that can be used by generally. However, if you require advanced features or advanced security, Microsoft offers some a la carte license, or you can buy a solution based such as Microsoft Business Premium, which is include security, or you have budgeting, you can use M365 E5 or E3 for that.
Okay. All right. So Maya, if you have any questions or the question you asked is answered, please let us know. So if you have any further questions, please let us know as well. So moving on, Adi, from an anonymous user, how to enforce my user in 365 to enable and use MFA?
Okay, this one I also highlighted in the slide as well. For post all user enable MFA. So by enable security default in Microsoft 365 is makes easier to help protect organization. So once you enable a security default in Microsoft 365 admin portal, Microsoft will enforce security policy. So require all users to register for Microsoft Entra Multi-Factor Authentication. Or you can use a conditional access to force everyone to use Microsoft MFA. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So far we have one last questions that is coming in, but feel free to send your questions as well. We are open for discussion now. So what I'm seeing now is Adi, the question is what actually separates a secure MFA setup from one that just ticks the box? Like, as the person said, we have the MFA enabled but still worried.
Okay, so like I mentioned, you can review again. The policy has been set up in Microsoft 365 policy. So if you are not sure for that, you can go to the Microsoft Entra ID, just now I mentioned. So you can go to the properties and make sure security default is enabled. And from there, you can go to every active user to check whether MFA is on or not. Or you can use a conditional access to force all the user to use MFA. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I've received one more question here, Adi. If phishing can bypass MFA, what does that mean for Copilot assessing company data? Is there a risk there?
Okay, that is a good question as well for this. For this question, yes, we know that Copilot is a AI tool as well. So for yes, that's why MFA or security need to be implemented. So to avoid any outsider to reach our data, if that's mean Copilot. Yes, of course. If phishing can bypass MFA, what does the mean Copilot accessing company data? Yes, it's risk. If phishing bypass MFA, attackers can hijack a user session, inherit all of the user permission in Microsoft 365. Since Copilot operate on top of the Microsoft Graph and use the same identity token, compromised account means Copilot can be abused to access, summarize, and even to access the sensitive company data as well. Yeah.
Right, great.
So for
Okay.
the Copilot, if you would like to implement Copilot, basically, we have a campaign or workshop about the Copilot security readiness. So from there, they will explain and teach and give some information about the Copilot security readiness for this to improve your security as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you, Adi. So I actually got a reply from Maya Amira Yusri. She said my organization already implemented the MFA, but does the other method still required to add or assign? For example, phone number, email, apps code, etc.
Okay, so for this, Maya, for like I mentioned, we have to review against the M365 policy in your tenants. If you would like to disable the emails, the phone number, yes, we can disable from the M365 admin portal setting for this. So which mean you force user to use Microsoft Authenticator, which mean to use MFA only.
All right. So I also received a question from our chat for general chat. But feel free to ask questions from our Q&A chat bar instead. But the question is, how to control only single device from email access? Adi,
Sorry, once again, how to?
how to control only single device from an email access.
How to control one single email address? Yeah, just implement the best practice security that I mentioned just now. So make sure you enable MFA, set the complexity password for that. Yeah, very the basic thing for that.
All right, I've seen an interesting question from an anonymous user, Adi. If user does click a phishing link, which I believe most companies accidentally does that, what should we do to contain the damage immediately?
Okay, for this, make sure that a particular user inform the IT organization to deep investigate for this, and please make sure you disconnect all the internet access such as Wi-Fi or LAN cable to avoid that damage to spread all to the organizations. That is the best practice. And please report to the IT department.
So thank you, Adi, for the crystal clear answers. So for those who still wondering or would like to know more about cybersecurity or the things that you have experienced before, feel free to send your questions in our Q&A chat bar. So we're going to take a while to wait for some questions. If you guys have any questions to ask.
Okay, sure. Reza, one of our attenders would like to have this slide. So yes, I can share this slide after this webinar.
All right, that sounds good. No problem. Also, yeah, we just received one questions, Adi. He or she asked, but our data is all in cloud. That is the question.
Okay, okay. In that case, we can see how bad the damage basically. So, firstly, user need to report the IT department to deep investigate if they have security readiness from the Microsoft 365 or they have another third-party tool. IT team will investigate from there. So they will find the root cause is from where, from which email, from which user, and then they will strongly block or they can block all the access has been accessed by the external uh, I mean the attackers. So yes, depend on how bad the damage basically. First, please report to your IT department. Okay, another question I saw that from Maya. How do we know that our policy is strong enough? So, I've mentioned in the slide as well for this, we can use the free tools that Microsoft provided, which is you can check your Microsoft security score. So from there, you can improve uh, and make a changes by the Microsoft recommendation from there. So whatever you do a changes to improve the security and you follow the recommendation, your Microsoft score will increase. So from there, you can know that how strong your security in place, basically.
All right, thank you, Adi. So I also received, I saw a new question from our general chat from Pentec. So basically, the question is, Microsoft 365 allow 5 devices in access from email. If we want to limit it one device, how can it be done?
Okay, so this one can be done from Microsoft 365 admin portal. So administrator need to check and do some restriction policy from the backend for this.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I hope the answers to all your questions. But if let's say you have more questions to ask, feel free to ask in the Q&A chat bar. We will wait for your questions in a while. All right. So I believe that there is no more questions from you guys. So let's wait another 2 minutes. One last 2 minutes. You guys to send a message.
But if you guys would like to do some the assessment for the improve Microsoft 365 in your tenant, yeah, just you guys can reach us so we can help you guys to improve uh, one of your security readiness from your M365 tenants.
All right. So if there are no questions at this point, we will proceed to wrap up the session. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today, and thank you Adi for the insights shared. If you found this session valuable, we strongly encourage you to follow VLAN Asia on LinkedIn for more insights and our upcoming sessions. I will be sharing the LinkedIn link in the chat shortly. So we appreciate your time, and we hope this session gave you a clearer direction on strengthening your Microsoft 365 security moving forward. And looking forward to seeing you again in our upcoming sessions. Thank you and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Bye.